Hello, welcome. Shout out to Liliana. Thank you for joining. Welcome. Shout out to Hannah. Hi, Hannah. Thank you for joining. Welcome. Write your name in the chat if you want me to shout you out. You're welcome. Shout out to Grace. Shout out to Isabella. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. How are you doing? Shout out to McKenna. Shout out to Abby. I'm glad, Isabella. Shout out to Amy. Write your name in the chat if you want me to shout you out. Thank you for being here. Shout out to Katie. Shout out to Eliza. Shout out to Mavis. Shout out to Aaliyah. Shout out to Katie. Shout out to Matthias. Shout out to Callie. Thank you for subscribing. Welcome, everyone. Write your name in the chat if you want me to shout you out. Thank you for being here. Shout out to Kaylani. Shout out to Kenzie. Shout out to Valentine. Shout out to Kenzie. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Hitika. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Rosie. Shout out to write your name in the chat if you want me to shout you out. Shout out to Kyrie. Shout out to Raya. Shout out to Lisa. Shout out to Lily. Shout out to Elisa. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Ray. Shout out to Lily. Shout out to Clover. Shout out to Nevaeh. Shout out to Phoenix. Shout out to Paisley. Shout out to Ree. Shout out to Sade. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Lucy. Thank you for your patience. Shout out to Bushra. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Mason. Shout out to Ali. Shout out to Aldian. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Rosie. Rosie. Shout out to Lily. Shout out to Phoenix. Shout out to Doris Mart. Shout out to Elizabeth. Shout out to Ashlyn. Shout out to London. Shout out to Stella. Shout out to Mackenzie. Shout out to Tala. Shout out to Jalen. Shout out to Lola. Shout out to Jason. Shout out to Carla. Shout out to Carl. Shout out to Kylie. Shout out to Oreo. Shout out to Lindsay. Shout out to Missy. Shout out to Gael. Shout out to Tessa. Shout out to Disha. Shout out to Manhil. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Kada. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Anna. Shout out to Manayu. Shout out to Zoe. Shout out to Leah. Shout out to Ryan. Shout out to Josie. Shout out to Madison. Shout out to Gwendolyn. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Leek. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Tilly. Shout out to Phoenix. Whoops. Did I spell that? Oh my goodness, I spelled this so wrong. I'm so sorry. Shout out to Phoenix. There we go. Shout out to Luffy. Shout out to Jeremy. Shout out to Matilda. Shout out to Calvin. Shout out to Camellia. Is it Camellia? Yes. Shout out to Phoenix. Thank you so much, Phoenix, and you're very welcome. Thank you for your support. I truly appreciate it. Shout out to Anurit. Shout out to Camila. Shout out to Jade. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Jariah. Shout out to Mackenzie. Pinterest Queen 07, what name would you like me to write? Also, thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Peyton. Shout out to Sarah. Shout out to Mikhail. Thank you for Mikhail or Mikael. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Amelie. Thank you everyone for your patience. Shout out to Shadow. Shout out to Emma. Shout out to Leah. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Haku. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Alva. Shout out to Kyrie. Shout out to, I think there's like 2 Annas. So shout out to Anna. Shout out to the other Anna. There we go. Shout out to Mason. Shout out to Soraya. Shout out to Mikael. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Jason. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. Whoops, excuse me, I have to flip the page. Write your name in the chat if you want me to shout you out. Also, thank you so much for your patience. There we go. Thank you for being here. Shout out to Scarlett. Shout out to Anais. Shout out to Marley. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Mikael. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Julissa. Shout out to Ruth. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Mackenzie. Shout out to Tokido. Shout out to Aina. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Daisy Martinez. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Sarah. Shout out to Demetrius. Shout out to Liliana. Shout out to Amelie. Shout out to Tyreek. Shout out to Sapphire. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Sapphire. Shout out to Jasmine. Shout out to Baptiste. Shout out to Abigail. Shout out to Anaya. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Sophia. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Dylan. Shout out to Genevieve. Sorry. Shout out to Genevieve. Shout out to Edwin Ortiz. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Osana. Shout out to Avery or Abri. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Rumaisa or Rumasa. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Andrea Ortiz. Shout out to Mila. Shout out to Jasmine. Shout out to, so it was Avery. Shout out to, is it Melly? Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Rylan. Stray Kids, no, are they a band? Is it music? Shout out to Sienna. Shout out to David. Shout out to Rylan. Shout out to Emery. Ermi. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Zanab. Stray Kids is a boy band. Oh, is there a song you recommend or songs? Shout out to Waylon. Maybe I can listen to them after. Shout out to Koa. Shout out to Mira. Shout out to Alexis. Shout out to Waylon. Shout out to Rachel. Shout out to Lily. Shout out to Ray. Shout out to Paris. Shout out to Marif. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Ava. Shout out to Destiny. Okay, Zara, I'll write, let me write those down so I can listen to them after. Shout out to Zara. Shout out to Daisy Martinez Garcia. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to, hello, welcome. Shout out to Andrew. Thank you for being here. Shout out to Jaylee. Shout out to Charlotte. Shout out to Amy. Shout out to Kinley. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Kurt. Shout out to Savannah. Shout out to Charlie. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Malika. Shout out to Quinn. Shout out to Shantane. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Thank you for your support. I truly appreciate it. Thank you, thank you. Shantane. Shout out to Kimura. Shout out to Gresham. Shout out to Aubrey. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Bree. Shout out to Savi. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Eshika. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Donica. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Kali. Shout out to Chloe. Shout out to Zyla. Shout out to Sophia. Sorry. Shout out to Cabin. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Alvia. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. Write your name in the chat if you want me to shout you out. Shout out. Oh, thank you so much for being here. Shout out to Malachi. Shout out to Hosanna. Shout out to Leo. Thank you so much for your patience, everyone. Shout out to Ryder. Shout out to Lauren. Shout out to Kim. Shout out to Isabel. Shout out to Kennedy. Shout out to Kimberly. Shout out to Alexis. Shout out to Remy. I'm so sorry if I haven't written down your name. The chat goes sometimes really fast and I can't keep up. So thank you for your patience. Shout out to Mila. Shout out to Kenji. Shout out to Yeska. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Matthew. Shout out to Pedro. Shout out to Grace. Shout out to Lavender. Shout out to, oh no, it's going fast. Shout out to Natalie. Shout out to Rhea, or Rhea. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Wassam. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Jess. Shout out to Ezekiel. Shout out to Noel. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Grain. Thank you everyone for your patience. Shout out to Adelaide. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Hadley. Shout out to Andrea. Shout out to Bryn. Shout out to Gunner. Shout out to Harper. Shout out to Alana or Elena. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Alessia. Shout out to Darcy. Shout out to Lily. Shout out to Savannah. Hadley, I put you. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Kim. Shout out to Amber. Shout out to Arlette Martinez Garcia. Shout out to Azaria. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Bailey. Shout out to Jolene. Shout out to Olivia. Shout out to Abby. Bryn, I got you. Shout out to Hannah. Shout out to Paris. Shout out to Lennon. Shout out to Miku. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Max. Shout out to Hales. Shout out to Remy. Shout out to Kaylee. Shout out to Rose. Shout out to Darlene. Shout out to Zuleika. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Emmy. Shout out to Sally. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Scarlett. Shout out to Bryn. Shout out to Sadie. Shout out to Ellie. Shout out to Trinity. Shout out to Ariel. Shout out to Mia. Shout out to Quinn. Shout out to Skylar. Shout out to Emmy. Shout out to Ella. Shout out to Genevieve. Shout out to Kyrie. Shout out to Louie. Emmy, I got you. Shout out to Lucy. Shout out to Yared. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Xavier. Shout out to these people. Give me 30 seconds. I'll be right back. Thank you for your patience. Some of my markers are running out, so let me just get some new markers. Okay, on to the next page. Thank you so much for your patience. I just had to switch out some of my markers. They're running out. Okay. Thank you for being here. Write your name in the chat if you want me to shout you out. Shout out to Ada or Ada. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Sion or Cyan. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Valerie. Shout out to Addison. Shout out to Clara. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Amir. Shout out to Kaylee. Shout out to Araya. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Melody. Shout out to Bianca. Shout out to Bobby. Shout out to Adeline. Shout out to Jace. Shout out to Sorry, the chat's going really fast. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Gersalak? Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to, is it Ken's? Shout out to Suni or Sunny. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Alfred. Shout out to Kaylee. Shout out to Ethan. Shout out to Rika. Shout out to Cody. Shout out to Riley. Shout out to 11. Shout out to Ivana. Shout out to Diana. Shout out to Willow. Shout out to Macy. Shout out to Easton. Shout out to Kathy. Shout out to Shauna. Shout out to Daisy. Shout out to Skylar. Shout out to Melanie. Shout out to Walker. Shout out to Alazy. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Wait, did I spell that correctly? Shout out to, oh yeah, I did. Shout out to Ashlyn. I didn't spell that correctly. Give me 1 second. Shout out to Ashlyn. There we go. Shout out to Navira. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Amir. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Sky. Shout out to Lizzie. Shout out to Katie. Shout out to Marcelo. Shout out to Alea. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Leah. Shout out to Bailey. Shout out to Darlene. Shout out to Ethan. Shout out to Andres. Shout out to Jasmine. Thank you everyone for your patience. The chat is going really fast for me, so I appreciate your patience. Can you see that color? Oh, no, I don't think you can see it. Well, let's try it. Shout out to Evelyn. Can you see that color, or should I change it? Can you see it? Shout out to Max. Change it? Okay, yeah, that's too bright. Let me do the other yellow. Okay, yeah, that's okay. Okay, there we go. Much better. Shout out to Abby. Shout out to Juliana. Shout out to Gub. Shout out to Tiana. Shout out to Layla. Shout out to Chris. Shout out to Natalie. Shout out to Lyndon. Shout out to Eve. Shout out to Alani. Shout out to Addie. Shout out to Melissa. Shout out to Serenity. Shout out to Kelly. Shout out to Brinley. Shout out to Monique. Shout out to Giovanna. Shout out to Aubrey. Shout out to Kaya, or Kaya, sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Kemming. Shout out to Fazia. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Amelia. Shout out to Amy. Shout out to Kylie. Shout out to Emily. Shout out to Victoria. Shout out to Grace. Shout out to Lana. Shout out to Bianca. Shout out to Jay. Shout out to Ava. Shout out to Kayana. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Monique. I'm gonna write your name over here so it fits. Shout out to Mia. Shout out to Tisa. Shout out to Elsie. Shout out to Jared. Shout out to Bree. Shout out to Kinsley. Shout out to Mallory. Shout out to Kim. Shout out to Bayan. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Rael. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Tegan. Shout out to Luciana. Shout out to Emma. Shout out to Ava. Shout out to Valeria. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. Like and subscribe if you enjoy my shout outs. I also post other content. I hope you can check it out. I would truly appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here. Also, thank you for your patience. I know I don't write super fast, so I appreciate you taking the time to write your name. Shout out to Kendall. Shout out to Aurora. Shout out to Zoe. Shout out to Kinley. Shout out to Adelia. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Shanika. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Shirley. Shout out to Lana. Shout out to Gabriel. Shout out to Jenna. Shout out to Maya. Shout out to Carlin. Shout out to Jayla. Shout out to Abigail. Shout out to Moxie. Shout out to Tatum. Shout out to Ivana. Shout out to Lux. Shout out to Juliet. Shout out to Fanta. Shout out to Victoria. Shout out to Bridget. Shout out to Bracha. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Arij. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Connor. Shout out to Mia. Shout out to Daphne. Shout out to Lyric. Shout out to Isaac. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Alice. Shout out to Joy. Shout out to Jess. Shout out to Layla. Shout out to Starla. Shout out to Adriel. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Bailey. Shout out to Noelle. Shout out to Delphine. Shout out to Lexi. Shout out to Adeline. Shout out to Paisley. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Brooks. Shout out to Dominic. Shout out to Camille. Shout out to Colin. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Sylvester. Shout out to Fatima. Shout out to Niasia. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Bridget. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Isaac. I wrote your name down right here. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Alexander. Shout out to Sarah. Write your name in the chat if you want me to shout you out. Shout out to Lillian. Shout out to Cameron. I'm so sorry if I haven't gotten to you. The chat's going a little bit fast for me. Shout out to Kimmy. Thank you for your patience. Shout out to Asaya. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Jolene. Shout out to Kai. Shout out to Emery. Shout out to Zaylee. Shout out to Tyler. Shout out to Zion. Shout out to Star. Shout out to Nancy. Shout out to Melina. Shout out to Kip. Shout out to Owen. Shout out to Kaisley. Shout out to Julie. Shout out to Macy. Shout out to Lola Rose. Shout out to Melissa. Shout out to Nathan. Shout out to Riley. Shout out to Al Shukri. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Zuaila. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Let me see if you can see this color. Can you see that color? Kind of. Shout out to Elena. Oh yeah, you can see it. Shout out to Andrew. Shout out to Madeline. Shout out to Bridget. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Kaden. Shout out to Anaya. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Miriam. Shout out to Josie. Shout out to Alex. Shout out to Kai. Shout out to May. Or Mai. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Leah. Shout out to Bridget, I got you. Shout out to Brooke. Shout out to Nylia. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Victor. Shout out to Kennedy. Shout out to Mia. Shout out to Ava. Shout out to Lena. Shout out to Cruz. Shout out to Sandra. Shout out to Layla. Shout out to May. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Delilah or Delilah. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Nasira. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your patience. Shout out to Zoe. Shout out to JC. Shout out to Maddie. Shout out to Cash. Shout out to Naraya. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Malika. Shout out to Madeline. Shout out to Nye. Shout out to Kimber. Shout out to Maddie. Shout out to Naomi. Shout out to Lizzie Ann. Shout out to Zyrene. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Penelope. Shout out to Ina. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Esther. Shout out to Grace. Shout out to Penny. Shout out to Sakura. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Arista. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Audrina. Shout out to Kayla. Shout out to Cam. Shout out to Nasira. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Juan. Shout out to Jasmine. Shout out to Robin. Shout out to Sylvester. Shout out to Ellie. Shout out to Kipper. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Juan. Shout out to Graceland. Shout out to Harry. Shout out to Amaya. Or Amia. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Miriam. Shout out to Bridget. Shout out to Carly. Shout out to Lisa. Shout out to Kenley. Shout out to Cross. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Hayden. Shout out to Chantel. Shout out to Zara. Or Zara. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Juliana. Shout out to Ella. Shout out to Anaya. Shout out to Kiana. Shout out to Paisley. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Kian. Shout out to Bethany. Shout out to Emily. Shout out to Amia. Or Amaya. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Jaden. Shout out to Renaya. Shout out to Kai. Shout out to Gemma. Shout out to Asia. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Ronnie. Shout out to Rose. Shout out to Fallon. Shout out to Kezia or Keisha. Sorry if I mispronounced her name. Shout out to Camila. Shout out to Stella. Shout out to Diane. Shout out to Adelia. Or Adelia. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Emma. Shout out to Alexine. Shout out to Daniela. Shout out to Cassidy or Chastity. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Manon. Shout out to Haven. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Diana. Shout out to Gemma. Thank you for your support. I truly appreciate it. Shout out to Millie. Shout out to Akira. Shout out to Sophia. Shout out to Matthew. Shout out to Sienna. Shout out to Yesha. Shout out to Brooklyn. Shout out to Jacob Castillo. Shout out to Andrea. Shout out to Riley. Shout out to Sienna. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Finley. Shout out to Jacob. Shout out to Uma. Shout out to Kay. Shout out to Addie. Shout out to Amaya. Shout out to Maddie. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to... You're welcome. Shout out to Shazim. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Anuska. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Abby. Shout out to Kylie. Shout out to Alondra. Shout out to Lily. Shout out to Sylvester. Shout out to Winnie. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate it. Like and subscribe if you enjoy the shout outs. I also post other content. I hope you can check it out as well. Thank you so much for being here. Shout out to Fatima. Shout out to Hillary. Shout out to Marcelo. Shout out to Heath. Shout out to Jordan. Shout out to Presley. Shout out to Adeline. Shout out to Shazine. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Mia. Shout out to Sandy. Shout out to Adir. out to Emily. Shout out to Happier. Shout out to Yunche. Shout out to Scarlett. Shout out to Quinn. Shout out to Kenzie. Shout out to Hayden. Shout out to Amelia. Shout out to Paisley. Shout out to Millie. Shout out to Lashio. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Amia. Whoopsie. Oh my goodness, I messed up. Shout out to Sienna. Shout out to Atisa. Shout out to Chrysanthemum. Shout out to Olive. Shout out to Sadia or Sadia. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Ad Vlogs. Shout out to Genevieve. Shout out to Hannah. Shout out to Ali. Shout out to Carter. Shout out to Layla. Shout out to Hannah. Shout out to Isla. Or Ayla. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Emmy. Shout out to Emery. Or Ermi. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Riley. Shout out to Katie. Shout out to Zuri. Shout out to Araya. Shout out to Lauren. Shout out to Steven. Shout out to Lee. Shout out to Ashlyn. Shout out to Alexi. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Liana. Shout out to Luciano. Shout out to Willow. Shout out to Mary or Marie. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Diana. Shout out to Star. Shout out to Sylvester. Shout out to Layla. Shout out to Vanessa. Shout out to Olivia. Shout out to Olivia. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Maximiliano. Shout out to Anaya. Shout out to Aria. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Whoops, I messed up. I'm gonna write your name again because I messed up. There we go. Shout out to Amaya, or Amia. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Amia Martinez. Rosa. Shout out to Aesthetic. Shout out to Ava. Shout out to Scarlet Autumn Rose. Scarlet. Shout out to Autumn. Shout out to Rose. Shout out to Callie. Shout out to Lily. Harrison. Shout out to Cameron. Shout out to Baby. Shout out to Stanley. Shout out to Kane. Shout out to Barira. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Kyla. Shout out to Kay. Thank you, Ads Vlogs, for subscribing. Shout out to Menas. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Piper. Shout out to Ivana. Shout out to Raven. Shout out to Hanaga. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Harper. Shout out to Scarlett. Shout out to Bianca. Shout out to Scarlett. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Macy. Shout out to Dree. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Riley. Shout out to Ads Vlogs. Shout out to Aaron. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Max. Shout out to Nimra. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Ads. Shout out to Alexandra. Shout out to Baby. Shout out to Allie. Shout out to Martha. Shout out to these people. Thank you so much for being here. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy the shout outs. I also post other content. I hope you can check it out and support my channel. I truly appreciate it. I live stream every day. Well, I just noticed I messed up right here. Okay. Have a great day or a great night. See you next time. Take care. Bye.